Welcome to Holistic Health with Melissa, a podcast for women who are ready to stop living in survival mode and start truly healing. I'm Melissa, a holistic trauma and anxiety coach, and here we talk about all things holistic healing for trauma, anxiety, and the nervous system. We blend science, scripture, and somatic work to help you regulate your body, renew your mind, and reconnect with the peace God designed for you to live in. If you're craving real healing, freedom from symptoms, and joy that reaches your mind, body, and spirit, you're in the right place. The doctors in that system aren't actually educated about true informed consent, true risk benefit analysis. They are sold talking points. They are told that the vaccines are safe and effective, but they can't actually prove that they are. Hi, friend. Do you feel like you've done all the things? You've tried therapy, the pills, the diets, the supplements, and you're still wondering, why do I not feel like myself? You have a good life, but something still feels missing. You don't feel fully energized, alive, peaceful, or free, and deep down, you know you were made for more. That's exactly why I created the Freedom Collective. This unique 6-month coaching experience with community and one-to-one support is designed to help women stop forcing healing and finally feel safe in their bodies again. We blend science, scripture, somatic healing, nervous system restoration, mindset work, and Christ-centered identity to heal the whole person, body, soul, and spirit. Because true healing isn't just symptom management. It's becoming rooted, rewired, and restored so you can live from peace, freedom, and overflow. If this sounds supportive to you, check out the details on my website and reach out for a free clarity call to see if it's a good fit for you. I would love to walk alongside you. Hey everyone, welcome back to Holistic Health with Melissa. I am so excited that you are here for today's episode. This is a little bit different than anything that I've done before. I have recently shared some more about my experience as an RN going through COVID. And on social media, I shared a couple of reels about my experience. And a lot of people were asking for more. And wanted to know more details, wanted to know the whole story. And rather than just little like 60, 90-second clips of it on a reel. So here I am to share my COVID experience. It was a wild time. And I've shared a lot about my experience as a child and the trauma and my experience, with the school shooting and then my brother dying and all of my 20s, how I was so sick. And by the time I was 24, I was on 7 different prescription meds. I had IBS and migraines, rashes, horrible anxiety, panic, depression, insomnia. Like I was really, really sick. Physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, all the things. And it's almost like another lifetime ago. But that was the path that put me onto the path of nursing, right? My brother died and I was like, oh, I'm going to become a nurse. I'm going to go be a nurse. I'm going to help people heal. And I got into nursing and realized pretty soon after getting into it that what I thought it was actually like there was a big gap between what I thought it was and what it actually was. And initially I started my career in the pediatric ICU. It was a great place, like, right? Like we're literally like bringing children back from the brink of death. And there's nothing more beautiful than that, right? And I believe in the power of ICUs, and I thank God every day for modern medicine, right? If I break my leg, I'm not going to try to like stitch myself together and take some, like homeopathic, do some homeopathy at home. Like if I break my leg, I'm going to go to the hospital because that's what it's for. But what I saw in real time in my career, I was licensed in 2010. So in those first, 5 or so years, I would say what I saw was this growing gap between what I thought it was and what it actually was. Meaning that there isn't, in nursing school, you're actually taught, or at least I was taught that nurses approach healthcare and their career and their job and caring for patients holistically. We consider the psychosocial, we consider the emotional, the spiritual, we consider their family, we consider their physical health, we consider their symptomatology, we consider everything holistically, right? Holistic just means all of it. And like the whole person, body, soul, spirit. And in reality, that wasn't my experience. In reality, we're really focusing on the physical symptoms. Granted, like I said, I started my career in the ICU, so there's not a whole lot of room for talking about their emotional health, right? Especially pediatric ICU, like we're not really, there's no room for that in an ICU setting. And I understand that, and I appreciate that, right? Like when you're worried about like somebody going into cardiac arrest or like, not breathing, you're not really concerned about their emotional health in those moments, right? And rightfully so. Like you gotta like focus on the highest priority, and in those moments, that's the highest priority, keeping them alive, right? But I realized that that wasn't actually what I wanted to do. And so I went searching for what it was that I actually wanted to do. And I went through a lot of different jobs trying to find that. I did step down pediatric inpatient nursing, like in the hospital, just floor nursing, and thought like, oh, then I'll be able to, kids won't be so sick, and like we're not going to be seeing as much people, as many people dying, and I'll be able to kind of help with more of the lifestyle stuff and talking about like communication and boundaries and nutrition and and sleep, and like how do you prevent your kid from getting this sick so you don't wind up in the hospital and those kinds of things. And again, I realized there's not a whole lot of room for that in the hospital, right? So ultimately, eventually I started working in clinics and like, oh, primary care, surely there will be room to talk about lifestyle and emotional health and your thoughts and the beliefs that you're carrying about yourself and the trauma that you've endured, and what are you eating and how are you sleeping and how much, what toxic exposure do you have, those sorts of things. And unfortunately, my experience was that there wasn't really room for that either there, which was horrifying for me. And I was really disillusioned with the whole system. And this is 2018 kind of time frame. And I was realizing 2018, 2019, I was realizing that the system itself just isn't set up for the type of work that I felt called to do. And which is what I'm doing now, right? Talking to people about how to actually be well. What is your lifestyle? What is your toxic exposure? What are you eating? How much are you drinking? How much are you sleeping? Have you processed through the emotions of your trauma? What beliefs are you carrying about yourself? What beliefs did that trauma create inside of you? What's your relationship to the Lord? How are you moving? Who are you being? Who do you believe yourself to be? The answers to those questions, I believe, is where health exists. It's not in a pill or a procedure. It's not in a 7-minute appointment with your primary care doctor. And it's certainly not in the emergency room when you have an emergency, or in an OR or an ICU, right? And so in about 2018, 2019, I started really becoming disillusioned with the system as a whole and how we were serving patients. And then I started pursuing my own knowledge and education around holistic nursing. I got certified in holistic nursing, nurse coaching, and started on the path of functional medicine. And I really thought, like, I am supposed to be doing root cause medicine. I don't want to do a pill for every ill. I don't want to be, supporting putting people on a chemical carousel and keeping them there for life. Like, telling people you have a, XYZ diagnosis and the only cure for that is this pill, and you're going to be on this pill for the rest of your life. To me, that's not the answer. I think it's doing a disservice to the population as a whole. It disempowers people and it makes people feel like they have no options. This is the only option, which is a lie, straight up a lie. Like, that is not the only option. Like, 99% of the time, there are many, many options. And there are many different ways and many different approaches. And most of the time when people get into like chronic illness, chronic symptoms, there's lots of different things that created that. There's lots of different reasons why they got into that, right? And you have to approach it from all those different areas. To tell somebody like, oh yeah, your blood pressure's high, you're just gonna like take this medication for the rest of your life. Like, I've had clients that have come to me in their 30s. I had a client a couple of years ago who was 32 years old and was on 3 blood pressure medications, 3 of them. And after working with me for 4 or 5 months, she was off of 2 of them and ended up coming off of the 3rd one in the next several months. With the, her doctor managed all of that, but her blood pressure came down by what we were doing, right? Which was lifestyle, nervous system regulation, and nutrition. That's it. That's all we were doing, right? And the doctor, that system, it's not set up to support the time that it takes to help people with behavior change, with actual sustainable lifestyle change. It has to be sustainable, because if you're not actually talking about the identity and who you're being behind the actions that you're taking, eventually you're just going to fall back into those same patterns that got you there in the first place. So like, most people can muscle their way through it. Most people can really have some change in their symptoms and like, oh, I'm going to go on a diet and I'm going to like really clean up my diet and I'm going to lose 20 pounds. Most people can do that for a short period of time, but ultimately, eventually life gets in the way. Your beliefs come, you start to, those old beliefs kind of rear their head. And then eventually you're just back in those same patterns. And that system, the traditional, conventional medical system, is not set up to actually help people like that in a way that actually gets them well. That system is set up to give people pills and procedures, which are just Band-Aids. They're just masking the symptoms. The Band-Aids, the pills are not changing anything. The procedures are not changing anything. You might have some symptom resolution or improvement even, but you're not fixing the underlying root cause. Why did you get there in the first place? Why did that happen in the first place? I believe God created our bodies to heal. Our body wants to return to homeostasis, to a balance, an internal balance.
And it can do that. It is capable of doing that when you have the right tools and the right input. And again, that system's just not set up to give patients the right input, the right tools. So that's why I do what I do. And like I said, going back like 2018, 2019, I was realizing that there's this huge gap. I'm like, I don't want to do this. I am miserable in this system. I don't like the rat race, this chemical carousel that we're on. And at the time, I was working in, I'm not going to name the organization, but I was working in a very autonomous position in the clinic that I was working in. And I ran my own schedule, and I saw 22 patients a day. And I had, at most, I saw 22 patients a day. And I had to see those patients from start to finish, completely independently most times. I could always call the doctor in if they didn't meet protocol or if there was something that fell outside of the norm. But I saw patients for URIs, UTIs, STD testing, insulin teaching, diabetes education, strep throat, various different like sick and not well, sick appointments. And I would see that patient from start to finish and prescribe them any antibiotics that they needed, or any medications that they needed. And that was kind of like the goal, right? Is to run them through the protocol and give them the prescription that they need. The prescription was obviously signed, and it all fell within protocol. If it ever fell outside of protocol, I had to get the doctor to come and look, but most of the time they fell within protocol, and you would just prescribe them antibiotics or the medication that they needed, give them nurse advice, and send them on their way. And those appointments were back to back to back to back to back. The organization that I worked for could not have cared less about me. I was just a number. I was a warm body, helping them turn patients out as quickly as possible. And if you spent any length of time with a patient, like I tell a story often about a patient that came in as a new onset diabetic and needed diabetes education, insulin teaching. And he had been in the emergency room over the weekend, and he was there with me to learn how to inject his insulin. And he was in his 40s, overweight guy, super nice, and bummed, obviously, that he has this new diagnosis of diabetes type 2. And he says, and I said to him, did you get a consult for a registered dietitian? And he said, no, why would I do that? What does that have to do with my diabetes? And I kindly explained to him that it has everything to do with his diabetes, and that the nutrition that he has been consuming, the food that he has been consuming, is in direct correlation with the new diagnosis that he has, and that you can actually cure type 2 diabetes with diet and exercise, nutrition and exercise. And his mind was blown. He had no idea. And I was not there in the ER, so it's highly likely that they actually did say something like that to him. I'm not saying that they were so negligent and they didn't say that, but like they may have said that, right? But he was in the hospital in the emergency room, and you miss a lot of things as a patient who's not familiar with the system and all of that, and they're throwing all kinds of information at him. He might have missed it, right? But in that moment, I realized like I need to spend more time with this patient, and I have 5 more minutes. And when I walked out of the room to go talk to my coworkers and the chief doc on that day, and I said, explained the situation and said, I think I need some time with this patient. And everybody was like, no, we don't have time for that. We don't have time for that. Your next patient is in the waiting room waiting for you, and there's nobody here that can, help pick up the slack. And I was so angry in that moment because my hands were tied. I was unable to help the patient and support the patient in the way that they needed to be supported. And I felt so sad for that patient and for me that I just had to like, turn around and go get the next patient. And I'm like, this patient needs help. He needs to be taught. He needs to learn. And it's not my job to teach, in that job, it wasn't my job to teach them all about nutrition, but a little bit of education could have gone a long way for him. And just being somebody who's exposing information to him in a way that maybe he could understand, where he could take some power back and understand, wow, I can control this. I don't have to just take insulin for the rest of my life. I can heal. I can reverse type 2 diabetes. That was a novel idea to him. His mind was blown when I said he could cure his type 2 diabetes with diet and lifestyle. So that was kind of like the moment where I realized I can't do this anymore. And I was already pursuing education elsewhere. And this is probably close to the end of 2019. At that time, I found out I was pregnant with my second child, and super excited for this new venture of like learning, being back in school, learning holistic nursing, all of that. And, beginning of 2020 came and COVID hit. And I was 5 months pregnant when COVID came to, it was the first case was found in the United States. And I was terrified. I was 5 months pregnant. I was worried about my baby. I was patient facing in that clinic. I was seeing patients face to face. The way the organization I worked for was set up, we had a chronic problem with patients just walking into the office demanding to see a provider. And most of the time, the doctors and the physician's assistants and NPs were fully booked. And a lot of times I was too, but if anybody had any availability in their schedule, it was usually me. And so they would put the patient with me. And I was required to go in a full PAPR, which is like a literal hazmat suit, right? With like a backpack on my back, like Ghostbusters backpack on my back to help circulate the air. So I wasn't breathing in any of the air around me, right? With a, mask over my face, a whole head garb. And I'm 5 months pregnant, and I was terrified for my baby and what this was going to potentially do to my baby. All the while, the organization is sending us frequent emails with the death count, like, oh, this many cases in Colorado, this many deaths in Colorado, this many deaths in the United States. And I was nominated in a meeting that I wasn't a part of. I was nominated to be the person that responds in the most of the time. While I was there, my hours, I was one of 3 RNs in the clinic, and my hours were most, I was there when we were open the most. And because my shift was kind of like right in the middle. And so I was nominated to be the one to respond to those patients who were walking in. And it felt terrifying and super unfair. As I shared in the reel that went viral this week about this, I said the other 2 RNs, one was a female, but she wasn't pregnant. The other one was a male. So I remember thinking like, wait, like, am I the best person to be doing this? Because I feel like, I mean, I'm biased because it's me, but like, I would think we should be protecting this baby. And I wasn't saying that out of a selfish way. Like I genuinely believe that I would have thought the same thing had it been my coworker that was pregnant and not me. I would have been the one volunteering to go be that person, right? Because it would make more sense for me to be exposed than for the pregnant lady to be exposed, right? But that didn't really, they didn't care much. The organization, the people that I worked with, they didn't care much. And so I wound up doing that for a few short weeks, and then things were getting worse, and we were supposed to be like flattening the curve, social distancing, 6 feet, everything. I was terrified. When I was coming home from work, I was stripping my clothes off in the garage, not letting my kids get near me because I didn't want to risk exposing them. And I didn't know. They're telling us it's living on surfaces for an unknown period of time. We don't know. We need to kill it with bleach. We need to kill it with, like, I didn't know because nobody knew. And I just wanted to stay as safe as possible. So that's what I did. And I would come in and shower, and I had debilitating anxiety and panic during that time, seeing the ticker on the news and like them constantly talking about it. I remember just thinking like, this can't be real. Like, this is so scary. Like, we're all going to die, because that's what they were saying. Right. And I was unfortunately believed that we're all going to die. This is terrifying. And so eventually, things were getting worse, and the organization that I was working for, they agreed, after lots of heated conversations between me and my nurse manager and some higher ups and all of that they would pull me out of the clinic because they didn't know what was going to happen to my baby. They weren't sure how the baby was going to be affected, and they really couldn't risk me being exposed and something happening to the baby, and they would have had a lawsuit on their hands, right? So they pulled me out of the clinic, and they put me into telehealth. I worked in an office doing telephone triage for a few months until my baby was born. And then when the baby was born in the summer of 2020, I took my maternity leave, and then I was breastfeeding for a while. And in December 2020 is when the COVID vaccine came out, and I was still in the telehealth. I was breastfeeding. I had a brand new newborn baby at home, so they let me stay in that office, removed from patient-facing work, for a period of time, because it made the most sense to protect the baby. And so when the vaccine came out, initially I was like, well, I mean, like, I'm going to get this, right? I was fully in belief that vaccines could save lives. And I initially, I didn't even question it. That was my first thought, was like, I'm going to get this when I'm done breastfeeding, when I know like that it's safe, and this is a brand new vaccine. We've never administered this before. So I want to make sure like people are, that there's no serious consequences to this. And it was on emergency use authorization. So I just didn't feel comfortable getting it right then at that point. But it was never a question in my mind that I was in fact going to get it. And fast forward, a couple of months or a few weeks, I think it was beginning of 2021, January, February timeframe, they started saying like, I need to come back to the office. I need to come back patient facing. They need me in the clinic. And so my intention, I was, going to do that. And my nurse manager said, you have to get the vaccine before you come back. I was still breastfeeding at the time. But I was like, okay, I mean, I have to do this. And it's interesting too, because I had stopped getting the flu vaccine several years prior to that. Just knowing what I was seeing in real time with the flu vaccine, which is that it doesn't actually help people all that much. If you're a healthy adult who doesn't have any pre-existing conditions, which I didn't. I was, very healthy. I didn't have any reason. I didn't have any chronic conditions. I had struggled with things in my 20s, but I had resolved all of that. Outside of the anxiety that I was experiencing with COVID, I really I didn't have anything. And I thought, well, I'm in my 30s, I'm healthy, I don't need this. Like it's a 30 to 40% effectiveness rate at best. And it's not actually really like helping a whole lot. They say it decreases symptoms by like 1 to 2 days, but like, I don't know if I don't know if I want to gamble with it, right? Like, I don't fully know what's in it. I don't really feel like I need to take a medical treatment for something that it's even if it's a bad flu, it's like my body's going to fight it off. I believe in the power of my body and being able to fight this off. And so I had stopped getting the flu vaccine several years prior. I did get it all through most of my like hospital nursing career. But anyway, so spring 2021, I'm set to go back to the clinic, and they said you need to get the vaccine, and I was like, okay, let's do this. I scheduled an appointment, and then I had a conversation with my husband. Like, I just felt really uneasy about the appointment, and it was maybe like the next day or 2 days away. And I remember having a conversation with him saying, I'm feeling a little bit nervous about this. And he's like, why is that? And he didn't know. He had never planned on getting it, and he has never gotten the flu shot. He just didn't ever need it, right? Didn't ever want it, doesn't like needles, and just never felt like he had to get it. I had to get it because I was a nurse, right? So I said, and he just asked, like, why do you feel nervous about it? That's interesting. And I said, because they're starting to like bribe people with things. The organization that I was working for was giving out McDonald's gift certificates, $10 McDonald's gift certificates. Come and get a vaccine and get a $10 gift certificate. And I was like, that's weird. In my, at that time, 10, 11, 12 years of nursing, I'd never seen that. I'd been a pediatric nurse most of my life, and I had never given anybody any like monetary compensation for getting a medical treatment. It just seemed odd. And I said, I just don't understand the way that they're going about this. It seems weird. Like, why are they trying to monetize this and like make it so incentivize it so much? And I was starting to question like the motives behind the constant emails and the constant the ticker, excuse me, on the news. Like, why are we counting the deaths? And I started questioning what that does to a person. And I just looked at myself and I thought, wow, it's making me really fearful. And I'm like, fear is a really good motivator, right? So it makes sense that you would want the population fearful so that they would get the treatment that you say is necessary. And so I feel like it was the Holy Spirit telling me not to get the vaccine. That uneasiness was a Holy Spirit nudge. And I no-showed the appointment. And then my nurse manager later that afternoon said, oh, you didn't go to your appointment, which she should not have known that. That was a massive HIPAA violation. In the moment, I didn't think about that, but she should not have known that because that's my private medical information. How did she know that I no-showed? She was looking it up in the system, which is illegal. So she said, I was like, oh yeah, I must have forgotten. I was too scared to tell her that I didn't want it. And she's like, okay, well, make another one. There's another one tomorrow. And so she made me another appointment, and I felt even more uneasy about it, and also didn't go to that appointment. And so I decided right after that, obviously this feeling of uncertainty is trying to tell me something, and I'm going to listen, and I'm going to wait. I'm not going to be pressured into this. And so I told my nurse manager, I've thought about this and I think I want to wait. I'm still breastfeeding. I'm just not comfortable getting this right now with it still being under emergency use authorization. And I'm not sure how it's going to affect, my breast milk. And I'm just not comfortable getting this right now. So I'm going to wait. What are my options? And she said, oh, okay, well, yeah, we'll just fill out an exemption form. And you'll go through the exemption with the company. And so I did that and came back to the office with the exemption form pending. And the way that my coworkers treated me was insane. Somehow, everybody knew that I hadn't received the vaccine, the injection. And I didn't tell everybody. So your guess is as good as mine where that came from. And I started to be shunned. People would avoid me in the hallway. I would walk into a room and they would be quiet and all look at me as if they were talking about me. I started hearing little snickers and just feeling like all the eyes were on me. And I had one of the providers in the office was my personal, like he was my friend, but he was also my personal provider. And so I asked to talk to him one day, and I went into his office and closed the door behind me, and I said, hey, I'm curious. I'm a little bit nervous about this. I don't know how it's going to affect my breast milk, and I'm hearing that maybe it could potentially affect fertility later on, and I don't know if we're done having kids, but I'm a little bit nervous, and I feel like I'm healthy, and I don't feel like necessarily there's a whole lot of reason for me to get this. What do you think? And he was like, absolutely, it's safe and effective. You need to get it. Like we're going to flatten the curve. All of us we have an obligation to help society, all the talking points that we heard on the news. And he said, you have to get it. And then the conversation ended and he started bullying me in the office. He started putting notes and papers that he had printed from various sources on my desk. He started putting notes on my desk about how, somebody came in and they haven't gotten the vaccine and they're super sick. And this is evidence that I need to go get it. And I need to look out for my fellow humans. And here's this study showing that the vaccine is not going to affect, or this article, not study, that it's not going to affect fertility and all of the things. And I asked him to stop. And I said, listen, okay, I got enough information from you. I need you to stop. I feel like this is borderline harassment. And things escalated from there. I'm not going to go into all the details. But basically, my entire office soon knew that I was an anti-vaxxer. And they started making things up about me. They started filing complaints about the way I was caring for patients, about the way I was interacting with them as people, saying things that were completely untrue about my character and my work ethic and my safety, my level of safety with patients. And I've never been written up. I've never been disciplined in any job ever before. And I was suddenly being disciplined for things that weren't actually happening. And when I reached out to, people that could support me, I was turned away. And I was told, well, yeah, they have a right to be upset. And ultimately, my place of employment told me that one of the disciplinary actions was actually going to put me on a freeze. So I wasn't able to move anywhere outside of that clinic. I had to stay in that clinic in that role for a year because of the level of discipline. And I told them I'm not safe in this clinic. Like these are lies. These are not true. They had no documentation, just people's verbal testimonies, one of them being my former provider. And they said that I couldn't move positions, even though I said I don't feel safe. I feel like, what if somebody codes? Like I literally think that if somebody would have coded in that clinic, my whole team would have just let me do it myself. Like they would have risked a patient's life to push me out. And I was scared to be there by myself, scared to serve patients because I felt like they were trying to make me fail, trying to make me mess up, facilitating it in any way they could so they could push me out. And so I decided to leave, and I put in my notice and immediately went out on leave, and then just let my leave expire and never went back. That was a very, very difficult time. And so by this time it was, summer 2021, and my baby had been born the previous summer. I also had a conversation at the same organization. My child's doctor was also there. Similar type conversation. He was due for a hepatitis B shot. And the way that they handled the COVID vaccine had made me question all of them. And so I started doing some research and reading the vaccine inserts and looking for information online to support that the vaccines were in fact safe and effective. All vaccines, not just COVID, but all of them, the ones that I would be injecting into my children. And so I found out that I had some big questions about the hepatitis B vaccine. And in an office visit with my child's physician, I asked those questions and I said, hey, tell me, is he really at risk for hepatitis B? Is he really at risk? And the doctor's response to me, he threw his hands up and he said, Melissa, the vaccines are safe and effective. And if you can't trust that, if you can't believe that, I can't help you. And he walked out of the room and he never came back. And it was right around that time that I stopped working for them. So that really gave me all that I needed to know. That was the nail in the coffin for me, that I was like, oh, these are talking points. The doctors in that system aren't actually educated about true informed consent, true risk benefit analysis. They are sold talking points. They are told that the vaccines are safe and effective, but they can't actually prove that they are. And so I was like, well, I'm obviously not doing that for my children. And then similar kind of conversations around the same time were coming up with my family. I, in the spring of 2021, I started having conversations, and this is mostly what I shared on those social media reels or the first one, where I was having conversations with family members about the vaccine. And I was told by multiple of my family members that I needed to just get it because I needed to support my fellow humans. And if I didn't, that I should lose my job, that I was a grandma killer, that I was only cared about myself, I was selfish, I shouldn't be able to work, shouldn't be able to travel, that I should just go and die because I obviously only care about myself. And in trying to, maintain those relationships, I tried to reason with them. I tried to explain to them my point of view, and they wanted nothing to do with it. And you can go and watch the Instagram reel where I talk about a specific family member and how I ended up hanging up on her, and I've never talked to her since. But that's my whole family, my mother, my siblings, my extended family. I don't talk to any of them anymore, or they don't talk to me because of that decision. And there has never been any reconciliation since then. Like, hey, I don't care about this anymore, or like, hey, I was wrong, or like, they don't even have to say they're wrong. Like, hey, I want to have a relationship with you. Like now in 2026, like, does it matter if I have the vaccine or not? Like, I mean, does it really? Family, but they've never reached out. So we don't have a relationship with each other anymore. So what was fascinating to me about those reels, the first reel that I posted, that started going viral, was reading the comments from other people. And I would say 98% of the comments are me too. And this happened to me and my family also. And people posted, similar type stories, shared their experiences. And then just recently, there's also been a case that went all the way up through the Supreme Court where a nurse, or I think she was a nurse, she worked for Blue Cross Blue Shield, and Lisa Domsky is her name. She worked for Blue Cross Blue Shield for 38 years and was a devout Catholic, and immediately had hesitations about the vaccine, as she had heard that that it was created with aborted fetal cells, which goes directly against her religion. She immediately filed for a religious exemption, and she was ultimately fired, and then sued and just won $12.7 million for wrongful termination. And then there's, so many stories of people losing their jobs, losing their livelihoods, losing their businesses, not getting surgery. Like, people were denied organ transplants. People were denied surgeries because they hadn't received this injection. And my gripe is not really necessarily with the injection so much as, like, I think it's unsafe. I think it should not be on the market. I think that it has killed many, many people. And I don't think that for the majority of people, it makes sense to actually get it. I think some argument can be made for people who are really for the elderly, and the people with chronic health conditions, that there could be some benefit. I'm not a statistician. I'm not a doctor. So this is not medical advice at all, but this is my opinion. But based on the research that I have done, the things that I have read, and my personal conviction and opinion is that it doesn't make sense for kids, especially, and the majority of the population. And that there is more risk to getting it than there is risk to not getting it. But my gripe is not as much with the actual injection itself, so much as it is with the lack of informed consent. And that's kind of where all of this comes from. And like, the culmination of my business really has landed is the system is broken. And now the system operates to serve the interests of the system. The medical system is run by the insurance industry, the pharmaceutical industry, and the hospital conglomerates, who are most interested in their bottom line. They are not interested in the health of the patients that they serve. They are interested in the dollars that they are making. And that's just my opinion. And I have not I can't find anything to support anything else other than that. That is the conclusion that I have come to. With medical treatments specifically, there has to be true informed consent. And that's what this whole situation made me realize. COVID was like, informed consent is a nice theory, but I think in traditional medicine, as it stands right now in the United States of America, we are not actually practicing true informed consent with most things. True informed consent means being informed, means knowing the risks, the benefits, and the alternatives. The true risks, benefits, and alternatives. And with the vaccines, COVID and others, they're secretive about it. With the vaccines, they're not actually being studied to show effectiveness, because in 1986, they indemnified the pharmaceutical industries, the vaccine producers, manufacturers, because the risk was so great to childhood illness that they were to make these immunizations and then compare them against each other. And that's how there's no randomized controlled clinical trials to actually look at the safety profile, because it is unethical to not inject people with a vaccine that we have available and risk them getting the illness, because they could die from the illness, because we have a vaccine available. Even if we don't know the safety profile of that vaccine, we don't know the true safety profile of that vaccine, because none of them, not a single one of them on the market, has been studied extensively to show an actual risk profile, safety profile against not getting it. And there's no published study. Anytime any studies come out, you can see they're funded by the pharmaceutical industries. So of course they come to the conclusion that they're totally safe. Most of the time the data is skewed, and they use small batch or small population sizes, and they're not studying them for long term. Hepatitis B is a great example. 157 patients studied for 5 days. To me, that's not adequate. I don't think that I want to inject my child with that vaccine to prevent them from getting hepatitis B if they're only studying it for 5 days. I want them to study it for years, and I want them to study millions of people, not 157. So, informed consent. So that's being informed, knowing the risks, benefits, and alternatives. Consent is then consenting to that. I know the risks, I know the benefits, I know the alternatives, and this is the treatment that I'm going to take. This is the treatment that I want. And every single person on the planet has the choice to do that or not. I will die on that hill. You have the choice to choose any medical treatment, regardless of, oh, we're going to flatten the curve, we're going to get this vaccine to protect other people. It's not true. That's not actually how vaccines work. And it's not about the other people. It's about protecting yourself. And that's not being selfish. That's how it works. So with this vaccine, with other vaccines, that was not talked about. And the system is designed to serve the interests of the system. And that, my friends, is how I really came to the conclusions that I hold now about my health, about how much power I have in my health. That's why I really don't go to the doctor unless I'm dying, right? And even so, like I shared a reel on my Instagram recently, a couple weeks ago, where I actually took my husband to the emergency room. We haven't been to the doctor or the emergency room in years. And I took my husband to the emergency room because he had an injury. And it was a horrible experience. The doctors and nurses could not have cared less about him or about me. They were rude. They were short. They did not explain things. They did not give him any informed consent about any procedure or medications they gave him. We left and came back. And when we came back, the doctor looked at us through her glasses, pulled her glasses down and said, "Why are you back? We told you it's just muscular." As if we're just like making things up. She was so rude. And I realized, I believe that most of the people go into medicine, doctors and nurses, most people go into it with good intentions. But I think the entire system, COVID, the way the system works now, it has jaded the majority of people. And my experience ongoing with people in that system is that they don't care because they're burnt out, they're overworked, they're underpaid, and the system doesn't serve them either. They don't, it's a machine that only cares about profit. It is a sick care system. It is not a healthcare system. I'm going to end it there. I feel like that's enough of my story, my COVID experience. And if this episode resonated with you, please like it, share it, send it to a friend who needs to hear it. If this was your experience, I'd love to hear from you. Send me a message on Instagram. I'm Holistic Health by Melissa, or TikTok, Holistic Health by Melissa. I'd love to chat with you and just hear your story. And yeah, you're not alone. There's a lot of us out there. And I think a lot of people are waking up and realizing where their power lies in their own health. And so if you have experienced this, if you are a woman who feels like she has been dismissed and is not getting the answers from her doctor, then this is the type of work that I do. I blend neuroscience and scripture to help women heal for real from the inside out, and without pills and procedures, because I don't believe that that is actually healing anything. That's just a Band-Aid. So if you are interested in working with me, you can check out my website, holistichealthbymelissa.com. There's a form that you can fill out to submit an inquiry. I would love to work with you. I think I'm close to being on a wait list right now, but definitely get on that wait list if you're interested, and I will reach out when there's a spot available. So I hope you share this episode with a friend and help me get this movement out, because it's not just a message, it's a movement. Healing is always possible. I'll see you on the next episode.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for tuning in to Holistic Health with Melissa. It is such an honor to have you here. If you found value in today's episode, would you share it with a friend who might need it too, and leave us a review? If you have questions or topic suggestions, reach out on social media or visit our website, holistichealthbymelissa.com, and take care. I'll catch you on the next episode.